Hello and welcome to another episode of Laying Down the Lore 40k, a lore podcast in which we aim to separate our Drukhari from our Dark Angels, our Tyranids from our Tau, and our Craft Worlds from our Chaos Marines, and generally ask, what's up with this Warhammer 40k stuff? My name is Bencorn Barber and I know pretty much fuck all about 40k. With me is my co-host Christopher Crowlin Allen.
Yo ho 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 ho!
Who knows absolutely fuck all about 40k.
Yeah, nothing.
And my dear brother Darren.
What ho?
Who knows so much about 40k, it's a wonder he has time to do anything else. Over the years, this dichotomy between our levels of understanding became clear, and this series is an attempt to address that ignorance.
Hello.
I'm addressing some indigestion at the moment, so I just wolfed down half a ham, like panic. I was like, "Oh shit, we've got a recording, and I've got some plans, and I need to eat now, otherwise it's going to be too late in the day." So I'm just gonna, what's in the fridge? There's half a ham. So I am just proteined up.
What's the definition of half a ham? It's like saying, like, I ran down to the kitchen and ate half a food. Okay.
Okay. So it wasn't a huge bit of ham, but it was a good chunk. I would say it's probably about 350 grams worth of protein. I just went nom 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 nom.
Would you say it was
burger type?
Would you say it was 3 Kral heads or 1 Ben head? Equivalent of ham.
1 Ben head is like you could feed the 5,000.
As several pigs.
So it's between 1 Kral head and 1 his mother definitely drunk alcohol while she was pregnant head.
Put it this way, salty protein. I now need lots of water.
The worst nickname ever.
Did you used to dance under that name?
Umami protein.
That's my safe word. That's my safe word. Salty protein! Salty protein!
I thought your safe word was gyro.
Gyro. Snakes!
Again, we're not going to explain that for our listeners.
No, work out themselves.
No.
For about 2 weeks, I had a disastrous safe word, which was harder.
That doesn't work. Just to backtrack, if anyone listening does know what we're talking about when we say Cairo and snakes, you can get in touch with us and we'll give you something free.
Yeah.
Ben does not speak on behalf of me. I ain't giving away shit free. All right.
Fisting advice.
In fact, if you want to engage, you should join our Discord Patreon situation. Right, Ben? Segue.
Yeah,
segue.
Nice, Chris. Okay, let's get into it. Support request. Here we go.
Yeah.
Thanks to everyone who supports the show. You guys are the something that's
endearing.
Equivalent to soapy tits. I can't.
I love it.
Running out of things.
Thanks for supporting the show. You guys are people who listen
who support the show. If you're not one of these, then what are you doing with your lives? Like what is this?
That's not a rhetorical question. Write in and tell us what you're doing with your life. We want to know.
Yeah.
We want to know what the excuse is.
If you do want to support the show, you can click on the Patreon link in the description. Sign up today for a mere £3. Kral, what's your feeling on £3? What could you get for £3?
Mate, you can get... It doesn't matter what you could get. What you should get is a membership to the Discord.
Nice.
That's the situation. I'm feeling prickly today. I'm feeling really... I think it's all that protein I just ate. All that salty protein.
All the ham's got... He's got ham on the brain.
He's got ham energy.
Roar, supporters!
It's gone straight to my testosterone, that is.
I tell you what, you couldn't get for £3 is 3.5 Kral heads of ham. Okay, so if you can, if you can't have 3.5 Kral heads, just don't fucking bother. Just sign up for Discord instead. An extra £2, you could get access to the full back. You get access to the full back catalogue of our bonus series, Chunks of Dar. Dar, in one word, how does that make you feel?
Engorged.
Nice. On one Ben head. You've had more than 1 Ben head of ham today, haven't you? If you are keen to support the show, but you don't want a subscription, then that's fine. We don't love you either. But
tell your friends.
We didn't want you to join anyway.
If you don't want to pay us, tell your friend to find a friend that would pay and tell them about us.
Yeah.
And tell them we said nice things about them.
Yeah.
And we said bad things about their enemies.
But maybe say to them that if they still want to be friends with you, then they have to buy you a subscription for the show.
I mean, it's the only way to combat the inevitable shrinkflation. These episodes could be 5 minutes, mates, by the end of the year.
That's so true. It's so true. But if you do want to support us, but you don't want to subscribe, you can click on the support us link in the description, where you'll find our affiliate links and other support platforms. You can even buy us a coffee. Now, Crow, you know what time it is?
Citizen of the Imperium, it's time for frontal lobotomy or bottle in front of me.
Hey! Bring. Crow, you know what did we discuss last episode, Crow?
The Drukhari.
Excellent. That is, you're already doing better than you did last time because you missed an episode in last
You're
time.
already doing better than Ben, who hasn't even written questions down.
Well, firstly, Darren, if that is your real name, I did not write any of these questions down because Inquisitor Randall McDangle sent them through.
I beg your pardon, I forgot the bit. Yes, I apologize.
Yes, but in your defense, he has only given us 3 questions. So if you could maybe send a 4th question over, I will pass your thanks on to Randall, or his thanks on to you. Crow, first question. How long does the average Drukhari live for?
Now, is this before or after the fall?
Oh,
he's nailing you. He's nailing you.
Smarmy cunt. Right, okay, give us the post-fall, pre-torture lifespan.
Okay, well, I don't think a time was actually specified, but I would say half.
Definitely was.
Okay, 50 years.
Oh, nailed it, 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Do you know what, Carl? I'm going to give it to you. Only
you
because
provoked
it's the right
me
answer.
into giving you the right answer there. I'm the victim here. All right. I was going to be vague.
If they torture for their whole lives, how much longer do they get?
Will they live as long as their original pre-fall life, Darren? Or longer?
Longer,
Ben. There you go.
That's
how long.
Do you know what? I'm not even I don't even know what the answer was because I thought Darren said that it was only a year.
500 years.
They can become functionally
600
immortal.
yeed Functionally immortal.
Okay.
Years.
Right. Okay. I swear I've clearly misheard because I swear that you said I'd understood it as like it's 50 years, but if they torture their whole lives, they get 51 years. They get 1 additional year for all that torture. 1 additional years.
No.
We'll even
now that I've said it out loud,
year for you.
Now I've said it out loud, it sounds like absolute shit. So yeah.
Think of it as, think of the kind of energy they get from torture as energy drinks.
Okay.
They just
bad for you.
Yeah. It just gives you an oomph.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'll give that one to you, Crow.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Question 2. What are the 3 groups within the Drukhari?
Cabal.
Yep.
The guy who you give a piece of yourself to. Ben, you decided you wanted to give him your penis for no reason whatsoever, even though a lock of hair would have been absolutely acceptable. Yeah.
The penis, the name, though. The penis covens.
Something
they sound...
Eldari. Arc Eldari. I don't know. Homunculi.
Yes, Crow. Well done, mate.
That's the one. Okay. Pinhead.
And what's the third one?
Yeah. And what's the third one? The third one was, we talked about that between, the third one is the one that we talked about second. So we talked about the Cabal, then the and then the homunculi.
Then the beep. It wasn't the kind of floating scorpion dude, was it? The Talos thing? Or that was just a unit? That's
a unit for the homunculus, yeah.
The homunculus. I love that word. Homunculus. Homunculus.
And a homunculus.
I'm struggling. Cabal, homunculus.
Hang on. They're good. No, stop. They're gladiators.
Gladiators. Yeah, I can't remember the name though.
It was the witch cults.
Which word that you said? Yes.
Excellent.
Yes. 2 out of 3.
2 out of 3, which is 0. What is Scourge and how is it formed?
Oh, mate, it's when you don't clean your bathroom for a few weeks, you get this layer of Scourge. It's really quite gnarly to get off. But Kill Rock works really well. Vicodil. I can't remember, but it's really good.
That works really
that
stuff's insane, isn't it?
Vicodil. So you know what I mean.
Yeah,
it's kind of got white bottle, blue label. Those would be the 2 I would recommend to get rid of your
It's a bottle of acid, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, but taking it back to what we're actually talking about.
Okay.
What is a Scourge? Do you remember what kind of unit a Scourge was? Flap.
Yes. These are kind of like the they go to this dude and we're like, I want to fly, and they're like, okay, cool, anesthetic free. I'm going to hollow out your bones, stick some wings on you, and then the fun begins because you got to get from down here up to there, and there's all sorts of challenges and people that want to shoot you, kill you, maim you, twist you, bop it, and ask you really difficult questions on the way up. And if you get to the top of that, then you've scourged it up, baby.
You're a full-blown Scourge. That's Kral. It's amazing.
All you had to say was wings. That was my trigger word. That was it.
I didn't even say wings. I said flap, and just bam. It all comes back. All right, so that's 2 out of 3. Dar, seeing as Randall's
okay, I'll on behalf of Inquisitor McDangle. How large is the city of Camorra?
It's galaxy-wide, Darren. It's galaxy-wide, and you
that's
can
its distribution.
Through AMSAR, talking into the microphone very softly.
I'm going to torture you today. First, I'm going to pull out your fingernails. Juicy.
It's galaxy-wide, and they can access it just by strolling through a webway door. It's as if it's in the next room, but it's not. It's light years away.
Yeah. But what's its equivalent size? Like, okay, it's
what analogy did I use?
Oh yes, spherical London or something lame like that. Not hexagonal Venice, not pentagonal Prague. Spherical London.
Prague. Dar, for what it's worth, I thought it was a great description.
It's fine.
I'm just struggling to, because the analogy of like spherical London, like, I'm overthinking it. All right, fine.
Yes, you are.
Fine. I'll let it lie.
Kral, you've done pretty well. You guys 3 out of 4, mate.
Cool. It's not going to soften the lobotomy any more than I'm getting, though, is it? I'm still going to lose half my brain.
No, but you're on the right. You're going the right way for a wristy before you go.
Okay.
Pre-lobotomy wristy.
What did they call that thing? There's it's kind of a lobotomy. People do it to themselves. They kind of take out just a segment of their skull.
No, it was a
trepanning.
Trepanning, yeah. It was a form of pressure relief. When people believed that you had demons in you, they'd drill a hole in your head to let the demons out.
Right.
It must have worked at least once, because otherwise they wouldn't keep doing it.
Yeah. Otherwise it wouldn't have been such a crazy trend.
People still do this bloodletting thing where they just kind of, I'm
feeling
a bit down. I'm feeling a bit low energy. Let me stab myself. That's usually something to get me up and going. Which, it's a very dark elderly thing to do.
Isn't it leeches? Is that what they would use for bloodletting? Or is it just any sort of
yes, but they also used to have a kind of small machine that they would just put onto their arm and they'd click it and it would, 6 razor blades would slice open their skin. Very shallowly.
Sounds very 40k.
Yeah.
Does.
6 razor blades sounds like, because in there's that whole thing of shivs where in prisons if they make a shiv, they'll get a toothbrush, they'll melt the head of it, and then they'll take 2 razor blades from a shaving razor, and they put them into the melted plastic, so when it dries, you got 2 parallel blades, so that when you cut people, they can't stitch it. You can't stitch it up. It's not fucked. That's crazy. So imagine 6. You're like, I just need to let some blood out. I am never sewing that up. Look at the fucking mess it's made in my arm.
Well, I mean, we can either now, I can give you some content related to the final faction of the Eldari, or I can give you my recipe for prison napalm.
Nope, let's have some content. And if anybody wants to find out what that recipe is, you can join our Patreon. And come talk to
yes, you can.
It's quite engorging.
Right. Hit me.
I can't. You're miles away. This is very much an analogy for Kimura. I can see you, but you're very far away.
But I can't.
It's like you're in the next room, 600 miles away. Okay, so this episode we're going to round out the kind of the space elf thread with a look at the final faction. Used to be its own faction, then became a sub-faction of Craftworld Eldar. It is the Harlequins, which are the dancing acrobatic ninjas of
tumbling Eldar
of the Eldar. Yes, of the Eldari. So
I've been looking forward to learning about these. Go on, get on with it.
Oh, thanks for your permission, Chris.
I'll allow it.
I'll allow it. Right. Harlequins are the follower of Kegorak, he's referred to as the laughing god, the jester god of the Eldari pantheon, who fled at the moment of the fall, fled into the webway. So he is in fact one of the he is in fact one of the 3 surviving Eldari gods. And he exists in he's the one that exists in his most natural state. He hasn't really changed form.
Just laughing.
Since the fall. He's just giggling. Think of Billy Connolly in the leotard. That is Kegorak.
Sorry, my gag reflex.
Hey!
Oh my goodness.
So at the moment of the fall, he fled into the webway. The other 2 gods that have survived are Aisha, who's the mother goddess, who is imprisoned in the realm of Nurgle, which we'll discuss in due time. And the final god then being the bloody-handed god, Cain, effectively, who is at the heart of what, Ben?
He's at the heart of the Wraithbone constructs at the center of Craftworlds, or a little slither.
Exactly right. Moving on, that didn't go horribly wrong as I hoped it would.
Ben.
I am sorry to disappoint.
Kegorak disappeared into the webway at the moment of the fall. Now, the kind of spirit of Kegorak, as in terms of his worship, he is the kind of ironic jester of the Eldari pantheon. So he is the type of person who at a party passes loads of remarks about people and laughs at their kind of mistakes rather than engaging in any sort of serious conversation unless you kind of touch on one of the things he's interested in. What's he interested in, Darren? Go fuck yourselves. We'll cover it.
It's like having a fourth member on the show, isn't it? Those moments where part of Dara's sub-psyche just peels off and he's like, not now!
Argues with himself.
Listen, it's how I cope with the mental strain of having to do these podcasts.
I know Chris is a dick. Don't tell me now. I don't want to know.
No, it's a different dick, not the one that Ben left with that guy.
Fuck, I need to pick that up.
That was the decoy dick.
So they're very much a kind of ironic culture. They're very kind of past remarkable on all aspects of Eldari culture because they manifest all aspects of the Eldari psyche. So when the great kind of exoduses happened, with the Craft Worlds and the Exodites and the Drukhari, you actually had followers of the Laughing God in amongst them. Not kind of, they were real Drukhari and real Exodites and real Craft World Eldari who followed Kegorak and the principles. And some kind of, roughly 1600 years after the fall, the followers of Kegorak were summoned into the webway and they all just kind of went to the nearest portal and they disappeared, never to be seen again. Thanks for joining us this episode.
How long after the fall?
About 1600 years after the fall.
Oh, wow. Okay, right.
And it was during that time, it is believed, that something referred to as the Black Library was formed within the webway, somewhere hidden within the webway. The Black Library is the kind of repository of all knowledge that the Eldar have, kind of secreted away from the various aspects of Eldari culture around the universe, and protected by the Harlequins to an insane degree. So it's not just that you have this structure that is kind of masked in illusion and is very difficult to kind of find. It almost has a sentience, much like, listeners, we do another podcast on the old world, and when we discuss the High Elves, we discuss something called the White Tower.
White Tower of Hoeth.
In Safri, yes. And when a High Elf is making a pilgrimage to the White Tower actually hides itself. It has a sentience and makes the journey a lot more difficult for the High Elf in general. If you can imagine that, but you factor in that the Black Library is actively trying to kill everyone who isn't allowed inside its kind of environs. And the only people generally allowed into it are Harlequins and or kind of seers or chosen heroes of kind of almost mythic proportions. The ones that desperately need an aspect of knowledge to be able to save their craft world or their Exodite world from the forces of chaos.
So are the Harlequins aligned then with, or more aligned with the Eldari and the Exodites? Like, would they let a Drukhari in who wanted to know something?
It would have to be a particularly dangerous threat to the kind of Eldari culture as a whole to allow a Drukhari in, because the Drukhari are so self-centered in terms of the aging that they go through and the pain that they have to cause, that they're a very insular, inward-looking culture rather than the other aspects of Eldar culture. That's not to say it wouldn't happen. I haven't seen it yet. And so, yes, so the Harlequins then are not only defend the Black Library, which they've done successfully, but also are out and about fighting chaos. That's their primary foe. Their primary purpose is to fight the forces of chaos, especially the forces of Slanesh, she who thirsts. In terms of how they appear, they are covered head to toe in something called a dathidi, which is a hollow suit. So they have like skin-tight leotard covered in various patterns, and we'll discuss that in a moment. But in general, when they move, they look like an explosion of colored diamonds or other shapes.
Very distracting.
Yes, and the faster they move, the more blurred they're outlined. So when they're moving at full tilt, they almost blink out of existence in terms of being able to see them, because they just seem like a white comet moving across the battlefield. Mr. Chris.
You say they wear a hollow suit. Can you describe that? And aren't most suits hollow until you get into them anyway?
Go fuck yourself.
Always so literal. Always so literal.
I really... but
a holographic suit.
A hollow suit. Okay, thank you.
A hollow suit. Yeah.
Oh, the Sea of Soul. Oh, the Demon Princes. Right.
I thought that was a legit mistake.
I feel bad for being so aggressive, Chris. I apologize.
No. In your defense, Chris, I did think he meant a hollow suit as well, not a holographic.
A holographic suit.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's their primary method of defense. The Harlequin force in general is a glass cannon. They hit incredibly hard, but if you're able to hit them, you'll almost certainly be able to kill them with even the most basic of weapon.
I mean, they're in a battlefield in a leotard. Like, they've only themselves to blame. Like, could they not have, at the very least, gone with some light armor? Like, could you not have light armor and then the hollow suit?
No, because it restricts their movement, and that's the thing that gives them their power is their speed. So they can become incredibly difficult to hit.
They've got a very high dodge rating. Yes,
very, very much so. The other thing in terms of their apparel, they wear a face mask, so you can never identify an individual Harlequin at all. They're just that, and that's the point. They are almost like they're an avatar of their god, and all of them have that capacity. They represent the laughing god, every single one of them in all aspects.
Cool.
The masks they have can project various images to kind of reflect the archetype that they're playing, because they're a performative force. They're they're a weaponized ballet company. That's how to think of them. And so the mask can project the kind of the character they're portraying at a given time, or in some other instances can project the faces of every single being that they've ever killed in the kind of terrifying moments of death. So it causes intense fear when they're faced off if they manage to get into close combat. In terms of weaponry, the kind of more iconic weapons are the shuriken pistol, which is a pistol that fires throwing stars. That's how to think of it.
Nice.
Their other weapon is referred to as a Harlequin's kiss, which is mounted on their forearms, and it looks like a large kind of hemispherical chamber with a long hollow spike. Now, hollow ending in OW, Chris.
Okay.
A spike,
thank you.
which, if they stab it into you, it unleashes monofilament wire. Several kilometers worth of this wire goes into your body and turns your internal organs and skeleton to soup. And then as soon as they start pulling it back out, the monofilament wire retracts back in. And
you just deflate like a inflatable spoon.
Yeah. Like turning a wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube man off. Just like,
But it's more like a kind of anthropomorphic shaped water balloon filled with tomato ketchup. That when it bursts, it just kind of goes blob, splat, ooze.
Like a blobfish,
A blobfish, that's right. And so in terms of the classic notion of a Harlequin in the 40k universe, that's really what they are. So it's a incredibly fast-moving, ninja-esque, in terms of ability, close combat warrior. The last piece of kind of equipment they have is what's referred to as a flip belt. And that is a kind of large ornate belt that goes around their waist, much like
regular belt.
The ones. No, it doesn't hold their trousers up because they have a leotard. It looks like the championship belts that like boxers or wrestlers wear. The big, huge, spangly ornate thing that goes around their wrist, and it has kind of anti-grav system. Around their waists.
Oh, so I think you said wrist.
Yeah.
I was like, you have not worn a belt before, have you?
It has an anti-grav kind of capacity within it, which means that even when they're dashing around the place, they're flipping and they're jumping, and they effectively can fly-ish over terrain with kind of acrobatic jumps and leaps.
They kind of like zip. They're 1 minute they're there, then they're there.
Yeah. Yes, but it is an actual step. It's movement. Yeah, they're not teleporting.
Infinite misty step.
Exactly right. And so that is the kind of core equipment and kind of look and feel of a Harlequin. There are other aspects of the Harlequins which we'll discuss now. So the leaders of the Harlequins used to be called avatars, but are now called troop masters, because each Harlequin kind of band is made up of 3 squads of Harlequin players, that's the individuals, troop players, each led by the troop master. And the troop master is simply a really good Harlequin. That's it. They are leaders and warriors. But they take the roles of what you would consider to be like prima ballerinas, or, the best ballet dancers within a troupe. And so these are the ones that are able to, how would you describe it? They're the ones that are able to manifest the kind of powers and capacities of the laughing god, and best reflect his kind of attitudes and character at any given time. And so they lead each squad. These then are supported by 2 kind of iconic troops, really. One are the Shadow Seers, which are the the masters of phantasm magic, which is just illusions, space illusions. And so these are, again, the kind of ballet dancer style idea, but they're magicians. They're space magicians, psychers, effectively.
Cool.
So it's the Harlequin version of the Seers. The other kind of iconic infantry are what's referred to as Death Jesters. Now, we talked, when we looked at the craft worlds, we talked about the Dark Reapers. And so these are heavily armored, missile launcher equipped aspect warriors. These are the Mogan Ra. Do you remember the kind of the guy in the skeleton armor, big bulky aspect warrior with a shuriken cannon with kind of a scythe on the end of it?
Mm.
Think of that, but just wearing a leotard. That's what a Death Jester is.
I'd rather
you can take the edge off any character just by putting in a leotard.
You really can. You gotta do it. It's Rogel Dorn in a leotard.
It's Primarch Fulgrim in a leotard. Oh, he's crotchless. Oh.
And now, our next comic needs no introduction. He puts the Harley in hilarious. The Lord of Laughter himself, Kangaroo! Thanks, guys. Thank you. I'm so sorry I'm late. Webway traffic this time of day. I'm telling you, it's unbelievable. You'd be quicker finding a cure to Nurgle's rot than getting across the webway right now. But you know what my least favourite part about the webway is? You can get anywhere in the galaxy, from A to B, in a heartbeat. But where are the damn road signs? Right? I mean, you better be sure you know where you're going when you leave, you know? And have you ever tried stopping and asking for directions in the webway? Huh? So I was lost in there the other week, and I waved down a ship to ask for help, and just so happened to be a Drakari. And you know what those guys are like. So I'm like, "Hey mate, can you help me find the way to the Dark City?" And the Drakari, they look at me, face all covered in some poor soul's blood, a piece of intestine or something, whatever, hanging out their mouth. And they say, "To be lost in the webway is to be lost forever." Righto, mate. I mean, what do you even say to that? Talk about feeling uncomfortable. I felt less awkward giving a high five to a towel. No, I love the webway. None of that risky warp travel business that those Imperium idiots use, you know? One time, I was heading to the Black Library to return a tome that may or may not have been several light years overdue. Come on, can you blame me? We've all had time and space bent around us one time or another. I mean, who's never popped through the webway to get a missing ingredient whilst you're cooking? You're gone less than 5 minutes, only to return to a planet that no longer exists. Your kin, your friends, lie extinct. Yet that roast tyrannid joint you left cooking? Still way undercooked. So yeah, I was heading through the webway on my way to the Black Library when, surprise, surprise, I got lost. Yeah, I ended up on some backwater mining planet, Piscina 4 or something. And this really highlights how idiotic the Imperium is. Anyway, landed in the mother of all battles between a bunch of orcs and one of the Space Marine chapters, the Furious Tadpoles. Or the not quite ultra, but pretty rockin' anyway Marines. Or something. And on my way over the Space Marine ranks, I saw crowds of orc prisoners of war. Let's digest that for just a moment. Orcs kept alive as prisoners. Can you imagine what it'd be like being the warden on that prison? Right? Those Marines would be safer using a lasgun as a cigarette lighter. And that wasn't even the best part. No. There were signs all over the place where the orcs were being kept. They said, and I shit you not, do not feed the orcs by order of the Inquisition. That's right. Only in the Imperium of Man is common sense enforced by pain of death. Oh, thank you guys. You guys have been so wonderful. Thank you so much. It's been great to be here again. Good night, everybody. Good night.
So the Death Jesters really revel in the kind of iconic comedic death that they can hand out at range with their shuriken cannons. They have a specific type of shuriken which, if it hits you, there's a serum inside it that, if it gets into your bloodstream, multiplies itself incredibly quickly, so you just kind of burst open. Wow. And the Death Jester then makes some kind of badass, one-liner comment that all the superheroes make in these movies.
Yeah.
I'll be back, but you won't. That kind of, that better.
Amazing.
That's really the core of a Harlequin troop. And there are numerous Harlequin troops that travel the galaxy, performing both in war and in
stand-up comedy.
Well, as they don't say much, but it's hilarious. Yeah. Performing ritualized dances for Eldar cultures, and they are welcome in all areas that Eldar or Eldari are found. So you can find Harlequins in craft worlds, also on Exodite planets, also in Camorra, where they are held up as this kind of touchstone to the past, because the Harlequins, at their most important kind of aspect, is to tell the story of the Eldari from the fall to the present day. And so they perform numerous kind of dances, which are held up as enormous kind of celebratory or solemn
rituals,
events and rituals. Exactly right. And so while there are numerous Harlequin troops kind of wandering through the galaxy, it's a rare occurrence that one will actually come to and another aspect of Eldari culture, like Camorra or an exiled planet or a craft world. So when they do arrive, it's usually like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see them perform.
Right.
And so they perform
like Cirque du Soleil.
various... Exactly right, but performing various tales from Eldar myth. Like the chaining of Vol or the anger of Cain or Aurora. But their greatest thing, the kind of most culturally significant performance they produce is the Dance Without End. And what that does is that it retells the tale of the fall of the Eldar from their existence as these kind of hedonistic beings down to the birth of She Who Thirsts and the struggle then that the Eldar have had. Obviously, it's very ritualistic, very stylized.
Is it that popular because, like, for the same reason that our culture is just obsessed with apocalypse films? Is it the same sort of thing? Like,
yes. I mean, you'll recall that we discussed that one of the things about the Eldari is they feel everything to the nth degree.
Right.
And so being able to get back in touch with their history and be reminded of, the way they fell. It's important for example, the craft worlds, because they created the path system to be able to navigate life and evade She Who Thirsts. So watching the Dance Without End reinforces the correctness of that choice and the kind of self-sacrifice. It reminds people of the dangers of that. And, the same for the Exodus worlds and to some extent the same for the Dark Eldar.
The Dance Without End sounds like a long show, man. That's, do you know what I mean? Like
7 intermissions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like one intermission in a 3-hour thing is just too much for me. I'm like, my ass. I can't feel anything below my waist.
The music dies down at the end of the second act. Like everyone's like, "Oh, great, get to stand up," and then suddenly the lights dim again, and the music starts. Oh my god!
Like I am gonna piss myself or kill somebody if I don't get a fucking popcorn and a drink soon, man.
So in the Dance Without End, you have roles taken on by troop masters who take on the kind of main gods. Their dance represents that character, and they're able to program their holosuits to project the image of that god. Cool. And then you have the troop players, the kind of basic Harlequins, taking on various important kind of mortal roles to kind of showcase the degradation and eventual death. And speaking of death, you have the Death Jesters who take on the role of death itself, and they walk around the performance touching a god or a kind of mortal hero whose hollow suit then projects the wilting and dying image of that being.
Wow.
And this is all set against a backdrop that's created by the Shadow Seers, who use kind of mild hallucinogenics to, pre-programmed hallucinogenics to kind of provide the setting to show the Eldar civilization as a backdrop that these events are happening in. And then at the pinnacle of the Dance Without End is the actual birth of Slaanesh itself. And Slaanesh cannot be played by any Harlequin or any permanent member of a Harlequin troop. They're played by the rarest of Harlequins, which is why the Dance Without End is so rare, the Solitaire, who is a single nomadic Harlequin type. There are numerous Solitaires who are invariably found working normally within a craft world or an Exilite world or as part of a Drukhari settlement. And it's really only when there's a kind of coincidental arrival of a Harlequin troop, and there's in the very first kind of release of Harlequins, there was a story within which a Harlequin troop performed a dance, and one of the Harlequins, one of the troop masters, kept looking out into the audience, and eventually just walked to the front of the stage and spoke in a very kind of ritualized tone. And an Eldari who had lived a very kind of quiet life as a wraithbone singer, as a kind of engineer, stood up, nodded as if to someone who was a subordinate to them, and then they exploded into this kind of programmed light of their holosuit, and it was revealed that it was a solitaire, and then they would be able to perform the dance without end.
Cool. That's fucking wicked.
Sounds like quite the show.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the reason the solitaire is able to play the role of Slaanesh, and this is where we're going to get into kind of muddy waters a bit, is it is a Harlequin dancer who has either already had their soul removed and devoured by Slaanesh, or knowingly sacrifices their soul to Slaanesh at the moment of death. So they've either already had their soul devoured, or they have decided to have their soul devoured. And it's the only way an Eldar warrior can kind of, how would you describe it, handle the psychic pressure of playing the death of the being responsible for the death of their entire race.
Okay.
In terms of their lore and their army list and so forth, they were the second army list ever created for 40k.
Wow.
They appeared way back in 1988, and I think it was issue 105 and 106 was the issues where the Harlequin lore and army list was created. In 104, that was where the Space Marine army list was first created. So they were the second army list after Space Marines for 40k. And so they are a very old and treasured, at least for myself, a kind of faction within the 40k. At that time, they could not have vehicles. That has changed. Or rather, there were no dedicated vehicles for the Harlequins. What they could do is they could capture enemy vehicles, paint them up in kind of loud Harlequin style diamond
lycra
patterns and stripes and lycra, and could use them on the battlefield. So that meant you could field a Harlequin force that had a Land Raider or an Eldar Dreadnought or an Orc Dreadnought. And so these vehicles would kind of be operated in a very ironic fashion. And so if you had like a human dreadnought or an orc dreadnought walking into battle, you'd have all these Harlequins taking the piss out of it by walking in a very kind of similar fashion and kind of
mocking it,
slapping their legs and mocking. Exactly right. So it was a very infantry focused force, which it still is today. But there are more kind of vehicles, dedicated vehicles that we can chat about in a moment. But the only other unit which was mentioned but never used, there was never an army entry for it, were mimes. I'm just going to leave that in there. Yeah, there's mimes. That's amusing because none of the Harlequins speak unless it's to each other.
So they're all technically...
And even in battle, it's all done through sign language and kind of pelvic thrusting and what have you. So there's no...
Lunging.
He's doing the squats.
Battle lunge. You just lunge towards in the general direction that you want your friends to fire in. How big is a troop?
A troop can be somewhere between 20 to 50 Harlequins.
Right. And is that...
Of the various types.
Do you ever get, like... is that considered an army?
Yes, that's because these are elite fighters.
Right. Okay.
These are the best fighters, arguably, that the various Eldari groups have to offer. I mean, these can go toe-to-toe with aspect warriors really easily. And in fact, they can go toe-to-toe with Space Marines relatively easily.
If you had... Would they be equivalent to custodes? How would they fare against
No.
Custodes or nuggets?
Custodes would...
Yeah.
Yes.
Right,
yeah.
Okay, cool. Fucking hell.
I mean, it would be a good fight. And if the Eldari the Harlequins made their saves and their dodge saves, it'd be very difficult to kill them. But it's even more difficult to kill the Custos.
With the Solitaires, you said that you said this is going to bring lots of questions, and I'm guessing that's because you said they have no soul. I love the idea that like they can be a solitaire if they've either already had their soul eaten or they decide to have their soul eaten. I love that was a choice. They're like, okay, do you want to have your soul eaten or do you want to decide to have your soul eaten? It's like, I'll go with the latter. That sounds like the one for me. It's like the day after tomorrow is the first day of the rest of your life, and that way you've always got a little bit of time to spare. Like,
you can have any color you like as long as it's black.
But they like where the Drukhari have like cling to their soul, cling to their physicality, their souls cling to their physical form. The Exodites and the Craft World Eldari have waystones.
Right.
The Harlequins have waystones, usually on their belts, but the Solitaire doesn't have any of that.
Okay.
If they die, their soul is already.
So how do they exist without their soul?
Slaanesh feed.
If their soul's already been eaten by Slaanesh, how do they operate? Are they still alive? Are they still technically with us?
It would very much be like the pariahs, the human pariahs. The human pariahs don't have a soul.
Yeah.
Okay. And for the humans, it's manifested as this kind of psychic blank space.
Gotcha.
That's not how it manifests for the Solitaire, and that's the area of controversy. I genuinely don't know. Everything I talk about in terms of their souls is done. It's supposition,
right,
on the stuff I've read.
Okay.
So it is like they are effectively an Eldar pariah, but they have none of that anti-psychic capacity.
And are they better than a standard in terms of ability and combat? Are they better than a standard Harlequin?
In terms of power, in terms of their capacity and power, they are to a Harlequin troop, a Harlequin player, a regular Harlequin, as a Custodes is to a Space Marine. Cool. It's that level of ability, because they are... While they're kind of dedication to Slaanesh, which is the wrong thing to say, but they've already given up their soul, they have no fear.
Yeah.
They're not afraid of what happens next because they've already decided what happens next, or it's already happened.
Yeah.
But they use the Harlequin's Kiss, the wire weapon. There's various versions of that. You have the Harlequin's Embrace and Harlequin's Caress.
Yeah. Makeup sex, the Harlequins.
The Harlequin's Third Base. That's a cod piece for some reason. I don't know why. They can destroy, single-handedly, they can destroy a squad of Imperial Guard or Tau or Eldar without really breaking a stride. They're incredibly fast. And indeed, in one of the later versions of the Codex, you could double their already impressive attack number by 2 for a round. So they could absolutely decimate a couple of squads.
Unless you happen to stick your foot out at the wrong time, they trip and they're dead because they're squishy.
Yeah, well, that's always the problem. Yep. If you're based on movement, if your power is based on movement, someone trips you up, you're fucked.
That's it.
If your power is based on leotards.
Yeah. They do have, as I said, they didn't have vehicles in their first incarnation way back in 1988. So they have 3 forms of vehicles, and all these vehicles are designed to travel through the webway as well as be effective on the battlefield. So they have Star Weavers, which are their version of kind of troop carriers. So they're small troop carriers that can carry a squad of Harlequins into battle. You then have the Void Weavers, which are the kind of heavy weapon version of the Star Weavers. In fact, it's the same kit that's sold by Games Workshop. It can be both of those.
You just put more guns on it.
Yeah, the Void Weaver has a shuriken cannon firing forward, another shuriken cannon firing backwards, and then they have a Harlequin who's manning or personing.
Just spinning around in the middle.
Yeah. They have something like a prismatic cannon, which effectively a very focal laser cannon, which can destroy troops or destroy vehicles. And there's they have a haywire cannon, which can short out the electronics of quite a significantly large vehicle relatively quickly, allowing the other Harlequins then to get in close to be able to destroy it. The final vehicle they have are what's referred to as Skyweavers, and these are two-person jet bikes. So,
side by side or one in front, one behind?
Pillion, one in front, one behind.
Tandem,
and so you have obviously the pilot, the driver of the jet bike, but then you have a Harlequin who's holding on to a kind of little handrail, who's standing behind them on the seat, and indeed they can sit down as well. But they carry either these huge, what's referred to as Zephyr glaives, which is a huge halberd, a power halberd, which can cut through metal and vehicles or small vehicles and armor and troops or what have you. But they also have what's referred to as star bolas, which are, a bolus thing that you swirl over your head and try to entangle some enemies. And they have that, but instead of having stones at the end, they have plasma grenades. So they're able to swirl this thing around, fire at someone, it whips around quickly, and as soon as the grenades stick on them, they explode. That's a fairly handy item.
Yeah, wish I had one of them.
The only thing I'd really add to this is that there's quite an interesting kind of division of purpose between the three main troops within a group of Harlequins, within the Harlequin kind of force. These represent the light, dark, and what's called twilight aspects of Eldari life. So the light squad, the light aspects, look at things like swift action and kind of heroic, kind of the hero's story. So they're the kind of protagonists within any performance. The dark ones represent the kind of the antagonist, the villainous, and the kind of violence for violence sake, and obviously nighttime where the light is daytime. And then you have the twilight troop, and they represent the journey between the two, kind of the forward and back. And so at times they're almost as good as the light, at times they're almost as bad as the dark, but they can kind of swing between them as required by the performance. And when I say performance, I mean not only the dances, but also on the battlefield. So each Harlequin kind of troop as a whole, also known as a masque, MASQUE, they will have various ways to kind of make battle, various battle plans, and these are ritualized performances that they enact upon the enemy. So it's people dancing at you, but with guns.
Sounds very distracting.
I'm gonna die, but bravo. Bravo.
So the ritualized dances that they make or that they perform on stage can also be performed on the battlefield in a very slightly more aggressive way, with the exception of the Dance Without End, which does have an ending, oddly enough.
That's the whole irony. That's the bombshell at the end of it. Finn. Oh my god!
Yeah. And then the Shadow Seers make the credits roll up.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. No, the dance ends with Slaanesh trying to catch Kegorak, the laughing god, to steal the kind of last vitality of it. Yeah. And he just kind of flips and dances around while Slaanesh is equally flipping and dancing, trying to catch. And then they just kind of stop in midair. They just kind of stop. and then they all kind of they all end up standing in a line and they bow to the audience because that's how Eldar culture is right now.
Okay, that's up to current day.
They're still trying to escape the grasps of she who thirsts.
Nice.
I feel that scene that the Eldari children love that. They're like, look out behind you, Slaanesh is behind you. And like it's all very comical and like
I mean, they do have some of the things we could add in here. They do have some access to some very interesting weapons. I mean, we talked about the Harlequin's kiss. They have what's referred to as the Harlequin's embrace.
Hug you to death.
As well, and the Harlequin's caress. The Harlequin caress is
non-consensual.
You know how you've got power weapons, yeah? You know, like a sword surrounded by a power field that kind of, instead of actually cutting you, it forces your molecules apart. Yeah. A Harlequin's caress is that, but fingernails.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they have to get you, they Catwoman you. Wow. Effectively.
There's like, it cut you to ribbons.
Yeah. And the Harlequin's embrace is very much like the Harlequin's kiss. It's a huge pod of monomolecular wire, which it just sprays at you instead of injecting into you.
Jesus.
And so
it'd be like that scene out of Resident Evil when they get stuck in the
yes,
corridor.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Vroomf, and then they kind of hold for a bit, and they think, actually, it might be all right. Yeah. And then it's...
Yep, fleshy croutons. That's what you turn into.
Yummy.
Fleshy croutons. Yummy.
Fleshy croutons and salty protein. The double act you never want to see.
They do have access to, you know, they whereas I said at the start, the kind of iconic look is the Harlequin's kiss and the shuriken pistol. It is now a shuriken pistol and some form of really sharp sword. You know, and then power swords for their leaders, or the Zephyr glaives of the jet bike riders, that kind of idea. What's interesting is that each of these has a different look depending on which troop it's associated with. You know, the light, the dark, or the twilight. So the Harlequins of the dark troop, their weapons look sort of the same as the Drukhari. And the light troop, their stuff kind of looks like Craftworld Eldar weapons. And then the Twilight is some combination of those types in between. But in terms of ranged weapons, the primary weapon is the shuriken pistol. They have two other pistol weapons. One is a fusion pistol, which is, you know, a microwave gun, which can...
ping!
It cooks you to death. Explosively.
Yeah, you die with popcorn shooting out your head.
Yeah. And then the other weapon they have is a neurodisruptor, which is a small psychic flamethrower which lobotomizes you if you're hit by it.
Is that how I'm going to get lobotomized?
That's how you're going, man. No, that would be heresy. You can't use Xenos weapons to
yeah, right.
Sorry, mate. Yeah. Wow.
And as I said, that they are part of Eldari culture as a whole, and indeed both Craftworld and Drukhari armies can have an allied contingent of Harlequins included in their force. So you can actually play them on the tabletop with either Craftworld or Drukhari or the Ynnari, which are the combination of all of them under the aspect of the god of death.
Yikes. Death. You said, so 1600 years after the fall, the laughing god kind of goes, right, all of you that are into me, let's go hang out together. And so there were Drukhari, and pick up your free leotard on the way in. So you had Drukhari, and then the Craftworlds, and then the Exodites, and then there was a portion of each one of those that was like, oh, actually, I'm not really a Craftworldy kind of guy. I'm actually I'm going to go with these guys, and then they just fucked off into. Was that how it worked? Like, and what happened when they all got there? Did they all oh, he's a craft worlder, yeah, you don't want to talk to him, or like, oh, he's a Drukhari, what's he doing here? Like, or did they all just like remove their personalities and become Harlequins? Bam.
I think it's the latter. I think that when they received the summons, it was like a spiritual thing within them.
Right.
They felt drawn into the webway. And what we're talking about is like a handful of Eldari from every craft world, a handful of Eldari from various Exodite planets, and a handful from the various Drukhari settlements of the time.
Right.
Kamora obviously being the biggest, or yeah. So you're talking about maybe a couple of thousand at the absolute most,
right,
in terms of Harlequin or proto-Harlequins went into the warp. What happened there? No, it's never been really discussed.
We don't talk about it then.
They must have, they must have met with Kegorak, who instructed them or trained them or showed them how to do things, which is another word for training or instructing, Darren, what you're doing with your life. And then they had access to one assumes that the light and the dark is based on the equipment that was brought with them. They must be able to make equipment and, or have access to their own kind of forges to construct this stuff. Yeah, it's all centered around the Black Library, which has only, I think, properly penetrated only once. And that time it was a human, an inquisitor called Jack Draco. And he stole a book from the Black Library, but was only able to escape as a disembodied spirit with a kind of spiritual copy of the book that, and he haunts the webway. And that's from a very, very old, one of the first kind of series of books written in for 40k. Old Bookie Jack Draco.
Wow. Old Bookie Jack. Don't hang around the webway too long, or old Bookie Jack will get you.
If you look at the original illustration of him, he actually looks like Sean Connery in Hunt for Red October.
Really?
That's
Red October standing by.
Standing by.
Simply Red, standing by.
I'm Russian.
Red Bubbles standing by.
But the biggest threat to the Black Library at the minute is Ahriman, the kind of who was the chief librarian, effectively, of the Thousand Sons during the Horus Heresy.
Oh, he wants all them books.
So he's come close to getting in twice, and it's taken an enormous force of Harlequins, it's a relative scale, and Eldari to repulse. Yeah. So he's desperate to try and get in there because he believes that there's enough knowledge about chaos held in the Black Library that will allow him to perform a ritual that will turn him into a chaos god.
Ah, that's cool.
He's tripping. Bro's tripping.
Yeah.
Where do they get this information from? Where do they come to this conclusion? My women's intuition is telling me if I do this and then do that, and if that happens and I do that, this is going to be the result.
He's just sure? Like, no, bro. I was at the pub on Friday, right? And I heard these two guys talking, and they said there's this library, yo. We got to go find this library.
It's a sure thing. It's a sure thing.
So in terms of the kind of elite forces of the Eldari, the Harlequins are right up there, who are fighting not only physical battles, but existential battles, and are the kind of warrior poets or warrior artists of the Eldari race.
Quite a lot on their plate. So they're highly trained killers and warriors and battle makers, but they've got time for acting and thespianisms and the creative arts.
Oh yeah, it's a hobby.
Yeah.
Do you know, like when your hobby gets way out of control? That's what they are.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
I can't even make a dent in my to-do list. Like, how do you get up that early?
What have you done with your life?
But the thing is that there could be a lot more. There could be a great many more Harlequins in each troop, but you just can't tell because they've all got the same kind of outfit on, and they're all masked.
Yeah, and when they move, they're just a blur. So, I mean, is it 1? Is it 7? We don't know. Nobody knows.
Is it 1? Is it 2? One giving a piggyback to the other? Some sort of combat piggyback?
The Harlequins were the one of the few races I do remember when I was a wee bairn, and my brother was into Warhammer and like reading White Dwarf and magazines and whatnot.
Yeah.
They were. Yeah, probably I was called like your stereotypical Space Marines, the Harlequins and the Harlequins Kiss. They were the ones that really stood out. Core memory, right there. Core memory.
Yeah,
core memory. I mean, they're the ones for 10th edition, with the exception of the Black Templars, which is a given for me. I'm most interested in getting a small force of those guys together.
They seem to be, in terms of the lore, a really, really well-rounded, finished article. Like they're very, very in depth. They're very unique. They don't seem to be a kind of a version of it. I know they're Eldar, but there's nothing like them elsewhere in the they don't seem to have an equivalent.
They're the most infamous Eldar, right?
How so?
Because they're the ones that Chris heard about first when he was a kid.
Yeah, exactly. It's all relative to me. Well, yeah, maybe it is. Maybe that's my biased view on them. But when you think of Warhammer Elves, Eldari, the first thing I think of, but again, it's because I just have memories of reading about them, are Harlequins. Yeah,
I think that's probably the case, because when I think about Eldar, I think about Guardians, about Storm Guardians.
Yeah. I mean, the Harlequins were their kind of lore and army list was released 2 years before the actual craft world Eldar with the aspect warriors and the seers and the various path systems was released to the public. So they are the almost original Eldar army that you could you've got the army list that's intelligible and that you can play.
That is mad.
And they were one of the first box sets. It was a box of 18 Harlequin figures, including some what would become Shadow Seers, what were the Death Jesters, who could be equipped with las cannons as well to take out vehicles, and the various troops and troop masters, which were referred to back then as avatars. So yeah, they were the first kind of actively collectible and playable Eldar force.
Dope. And they look fabulous.
They do look fabulous.
I want to see leotards on other races. A Space Marine in full armor.
What's your fetish, though, Ben?
With a leotard over the top.
Leotard over it.
Battle leotard.
Yeah.
They are definitely my favourite part of the Eldar.
Yeah, don't say that, Chris. That's easily confusable.
Yeah. A battle tard.
Okay. Whoa, Ben. No. Whoa. No.
To wrap up, then, that is the Eldar, or those are the Eldari factions up to the current day, with the exception of the Inari, which we will cover anon. Dear listener, don't send me emails. I know I've not covered
Calm
the Inari.
Calm the fuck down.
Yeah.
There is a plan. Do you think this stuff happens by accident? I know it seems like it happens by accident.
There's a plan?
Oh, we will cover it anon. There's a plan? Who?
Right.
Did someone hit record?
All right, that's all from us. Thank you so much for listening. Details and imagery for the topics we've discussed in this podcast can be found on our website at layingdownthelore.com. We also have all our previous episodes on there, release schedules, and merchandise. And again, if you are keen to support this show, just click on the support us link in the description and give us all your well-earned pennies. We'll be back again displaying just how little I want to see Chris in a leotard. And until then, goodbye.
Farewell, goodbye, and so on.
I like you as a friend.